Is the new Monport MEGA 70-watt intelligent CO2 laser worth your money? Hey peeps, let's go ahead and unbox this laser to unpack this question. A huge thank you to Monport for sending us this massive, powerful desktop laser. And if you decide this laser or any Monport laser is worth it for you, make sure to use our discount code Anonymous10 for 10% off. This laser is very large and heavy, so we'd recommend to make sure to have multiple people to help lift it. We did end up having some issues with getting the antifreeze and water to flow through the system, which we'll discuss later.
All right, so under the hood on the back here, obviously we have our massive laser tube, CO2 laser tube, and we have here a CO2 canister to be used for extinguishing fires, which is pretty nice feature to have in this machine. And that's fed through our air hose. Here's our line for our air assist, as well as the line for the CO2 canister here. Right here is our exhaust port, so our exhaust tube adapter plugs in here. Now what's interesting is this appears to be 3D printed. Very interesting. There's a couple pieces on this machine we'll point out that looks like it's 3D printed rather than mold injection. So we have here our pass-through, which is on a magnetic clip there. That's neat. Back here we have our gantry stepper motor, which connects to both sides of the machine. And then we have our antifreeze / water tank. Our primary mirror is here, right to the end of our CO2 tube. And then down here, this was an issue that we faced when we initially poured in antifreeze into our machine. The machine was not primed with fluid, so the water pump here didn't seem like it was pumping any water through our tube and through our radiator, which is on the side here. So I noticed that there was a big kink right here in the tube, and what happened was this line here was a bit too long and it created a harsh corner right about here when it connected into our water pump, which was reducing the amount of flow that we had. So that was making it so that this water pump was not actually doing its job. So what I ended up doing is taking this off and cutting it just a little bit, like maybe a 1/4 inch off of it, and then pushing it on further. And now the crease is gone, and that's what did it. So once I turned the machine back on after that point, we were able to prime our machine, and we have fluid all going through our tube. So that fixed that issue. If you run into issues with the water pump not doing it, just check to make sure there's no creases in your lines. So here at the laser head, there were 3 screws at the top, and then there are 2 screws along the side of this body to take this off. So I removed those screws. I will say that it's pretty complex, the number of screws required to get this off of your laser head. Like if you wanted to get some detailed cleaning, that's kind of a hassle. I kind of would have wished they would have made this a little bit more easily removable, but I guess it is what it is. So here at the laser head, we have our final mirror, which directs the laser beam down our laser tube. Now there's a lens in here, and right here is our air assist, and you can see it's on kind of a adjustable tube here, which is nice so that this can focus itself and not pull or anything. Right here is our LiDAR module. So LiDAR is basically a laser distance and range finder. This is just measuring a distance between the material and the laser head. So it knows how much to move our laser nozzle down. And then I believe that this is the fire detection sensor, so that I can detect if there's any fires and inject that CO2 canister if needed. We have our stepper motor here to move this up and down, and that's the laser head. So inside the laser, if you can see, everything obviously is fully closed off, which makes it so that we're not getting like smoke and debris all over our motherboard and all of our equipment. It's really all kind of separated out, which is pretty nice. Even the axis that this rides on is completely covered. Everything for wire management is nicely put away in these tracks, and there's no like loose wires hanging around. Now I'm going to note here that the backside of the front touchscreen also looks to be 3D printed, which again is pretty unique to come in a consumer product. So again, I would have expected to see something more injection molded, but this looks like a 3D print. You can see some wires here at the bottom. That's really just the latch sensors so that the laser knows when the latch door is open. Presumably it wouldn't fire if these are open and we haven't indicated that it's supposed to be. There's some latch sensors as well here on the hinges on both sides. It comes pre-installed with a cover over the bed camera. We're going to go ahead and pry that off. You want to make sure you don't turn this to get it off, because you could defocus the camera lens. So on the left side of the machine here, we have our stepper drivers, micro-step controllers, our main motherboard here. On the panel here, we have our Wi-Fi antenna situated right here on the edge here, a little exhaust fan. And on the other side of this wall here is our radiator, which cools our fluid. Okay, here on the right side of the laser, we have our emergency stop button back here. We have what looks like a couple power supplies, and we have our air assist pump right here, which is just kind of fastened there at the bottom. On the other side of this here is, I believe, like 5 fans that suck all of the air out of the machine and exhaust it out of the back port here. So this Monport MEGA 70-watt CO2 laser comes with a few things to get you started. Comes with its own ducting and ducting adapter, a massive honeycomb bed and crumb plate. Comes with a couple instruction manuals, though I will say the most up-to-date instruction manual can be found on the Monport website and is downloadable. It comes with some weather seal stripping to make a better seal between the lid and the body of the laser. Comes with a liter of laser safe antifreeze and a funnel, some Allen wrenches, tools, and some extra screws to finish assembly of the laser, some honeycomb bed pins to hold material down, and a laser target for centering your laser beam on your mirrors. Obviously power cable, as well as this USB-C to USB-A cable. And as far as test materials, it comes with quite a few sheets of cardstock, some aluminum painted cards, two 3mm pieces of clear acrylic, and then it came with this much thicker piece of, looks like orange acrylic, like the lid is made out of. And then it comes with 5 pieces of this 2 or 3mm linden board.
In order to download the open source software for this machine, we can go to the Monport website and open the page for the Mega machine. I will note that in the user manual, Monport recommends using a Windows machine for this software, so we are using a Windows laptop currently. Now we're going to scroll down on this laser's page until we see the software. We'll go ahead and click Download Software, scroll through this page, and select Windows. Once the download is complete, we can access it in our Downloads folder, open it, and then our computer will verify that we want to run the software, which we do want to. Now the software will ask us a few of our preferences in order to download. And finally, we can just double click on the software and it will open up.
Now that we've downloaded the software, we're going to go ahead and plug in our machine to our computer using the USB cable provided and turn on our machine. All right, so we're connected to our machine. Our machine is turned on. Now I'm going to go ahead and select our machine and our software. We're going to, for the first time, connect with our USB connection. So we're going to connect that. Try that again. Try restarting. There it is. So we're going to click on this, connect success, and then we're going to go to start creating. Now looks like we are ready for an update. Remember, we downloaded version 1.1. Now it's saying version 1.2 is available. So we can go ahead and do this update. It is recommended to do these updates because they often fix some bugs in the software. So we're going to go ahead and do this update real quick. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and allow this to open. And it's going to reinstall version 1.2 now and finish. Okay, so we're reconnected. I'm going to go ahead and reconnect to our machine here. We're going to be connecting with USB. Yes, we want to allow. We're going to connect to our machine here, and you can see now we're connected to our Mega. Now we're going to set up our Wi-Fi connection. So we're going to click on the settings here, network settings. Okay, really important here is in accordance with the newest instruction manual that you can download online, it does say that passwords with special characters in there, this seems to have problems with. So if you do have special characters in your Wi-Fi, you may want to create a guest Wi-Fi that you can log both your machine on as well as your computer while you're using the machine with a password that doesn't have any special characters. Okay, so we're complete. I'm going to go ahead and it says disconnect the USB cable and try to operate the device wirelessly. And I'm going to hit completed. And now let's try to connect to Wi-Fi. And there is our device. And look at that, we are connected. Okay, so look, our camera is already in there. So that's really cool. So once we were able to connect the machine to Wi-Fi, all of a sudden this came to life, our little touch screen here. And you can see here, we can swipe to get it to different areas. The turn feature doesn't work on it, but certainly the touch screen does. So this obviously shows us that we have a Wi-Fi connection. And then it shows us our fluid temperature. So this is the temperature of the antifreeze and water that we put in there, as well as the flow of that liquid. So you can see we do have flow there. That's important to make sure you have constant flow. So our water pump is working. This temperature shows the temperature inside the box here. And then this shows the relative humidity inside the box, so low humidity. And then it's saying that our lid is closed right now, which it is. That's pretty much it for features here. So now it's time to configure this laser. So there's a few things we want to configure. The first is to make sure that our camera is appropriately laying out where our material is so that we could use the camera to move our objects where it needs to be. So let me get a piece of scrap cardboard to put in there so that we could laser out a design real quick to do this configuration. Okay, so to do the camera configuration, we go into settings. We're gonna go into correction tool. That now appears that we're connected with Wi-Fi, it shows now. So we're gonna go in correction tool. We're gonna go into camera calibration and we'll go to start. So it tells you to place a material in the center of the machine. We did that with some cardboard and we have 3mm material. So we're gonna enter 3 and we're gonna click next. Okay, it's saying that the machine will engrave cross-shaped elements and the 4 corners and make sure the lid is closed. And then we're gonna click start to begin engraving. So we'll click start. Now it's telling us to press and unlock. So we're gonna go ahead and press. Okay, and now I can click processed, and now we can click start. It wants me to save this. So now that our engraving is complete, the instructions tell us to basically move these little crosshairs to where it actually engraves. So we can see it's clearly off here, so we'll line that up as best as we can. The more accurate you are with this, the more accurate your camera will be in setting material out and engraving where you want it to be. So we're good there. Everything is lined up. Drag these elements, okay. Okay, now we have green arrows right where it engraved, so we're done. So the next thing we're going to do is LiDAR calibration. And to do that, we need to have the thickness of a piece of material. All right, so we're going to use a piece of acrylic here because it's really flat and we know it's going to lay nicely on the surface here. And we're going to measure this in millimeters. So it's 2.7 millimeters. So that's what we're going to enter in as our values. This piece of acrylic came with our machine. It's one of our test pieces. We're going to go ahead and close that. We're going to go back into the settings tool here. We're going to go to the correction tool and we're going to do this rangefinder adjustment. We're going to go ahead and click start. And then we can use the rangefinder to tell us what it thinks the thickness is. So we'll click on that and then we can actually use our cursor to decide where we want it to measure. I should probably refresh that background. So now that we have our background refreshed with our piece of acrylic, we're going to go ahead and do a measurement right from the middle and watch the laser head move towards the middle and do a measurement. Okay, so our rangefinder thinks that we are 6 millimeters thickness in our material, but we're actually 2.7, so I'm going to enter in 2.7 millimeters. And then you can see it derives a deviation value, and we can confirm that. And now that should have adjusted our rangefinder or calibrated it to the thickness of material in actual distance. So to test this, let's use it real quick to do a thickness measurement. Click there, and now you can see it measured exactly 2.7 millimeters. So let's try putting a thicker piece of material in and see what it comes up with. So the machine came with this thicker piece of orange acrylic. I think it's the same stuff the lid is made out of. We're going to go ahead and do a measurement of this. And I got this at just about 7.7, 7.8, somewhere in there. Let's put this in there. Now we'll refresh our background. And now I can try the rangefinder again, and we'll measure right there. And now you can see it measured it at 6.7. Wait, is that right? 7.8, 7.7, 7.8, somewhere in there. Okay, so we did more testing here, basically trying to validate that the rangefinder was actually measuring the appropriate distances for different thicknesses of material. You saw we calibrated using this piece of basically 3mm acrylic, slightly less than, and we got that accurate, and then it measured it accurately again in a different location. When we put a thicker material in there, it was overcompensating and calling it much thicker than it actually was. So the rangefinder isn't exact. We found that it's about going to be a millimeter off, which isn't that big of a deal when we're considering the focal area that this machine can get. Basically, with the ability to cut 25mm thickness with this machine, the focal distance of the laser itself is much longer than, say, a fiber laser, which is a very narrow focus area. So this one has a wide focus area, so a millimeter difference isn't going to make that big of a deal, but certainly something to note that the rangefinder isn't going to be exact. So in order to check alignment of our red dot laser, or for our laser source, it comes with this little aluminum target tool. Now that we have our casing off of the laser head, we can input this into here. You can see that the red dot laser is right in the middle. So we're perfectly aligned right out of the box. No adjustments necessary. So quick break here. After we connected the software to our computer and got this thing up and running with version 1.2, we weren't terribly impressed with this machine. The hardware has always been perfectly fine. We were able to connect this machine to Lightburn and got some pretty decent results. With Lightburn, it is certainly powerful. All of the hardware seems really good, but the software, MDH or Monport Design Hub version 1.2, was pretty lackluster and missing a lot of key features that you need in doing laser designs. Now, we did see today that the MDH Hub version 1.3 dropped, and I think they resolved a lot of the issues that we were having, and it seems way more usable now. So now with that software, we're going to show you the ins and outs of MDH, and let's do some projects. Okay, so here it is, Monport Design Hub version 1.3. Version 1.3 is, I would say, light years ahead of version 1.2. Things as simple as rotating an image you couldn't do in version 1.2. So we're excited to show you version 1.3 because we've been able to get some decent results out of it. So obviously our arrow tool, selecting tool, grabbing tool, you can move the whole area around. The image tool, you can bring in an image, and you can see that. And then to control the parameters of the image, make sure you select on the image, and then it highlights your image, and then you can do some updates here. So for image editing, you can kind of see, you can erase parts of the image that you don't want to worry about, and crop, everything like that. What came with version 1.3 that version 1.2 didn't have is this image model, which is basically the style of fill that you can have with the image. So you can see it will update the effect of your engraving, much like Lightburn has with its dithering tool. So you can see you can select on different types of fills, which seems to work pretty well. Certainly a lot better than version 1.2, but that's kind of neat. We can confirm that, and then you can see it updates the actual image to that new fill. So that's pretty cool. Here's your text tool. So this here would be how you rotate. I didn't show that on the image, but you could do that image as well. Rotate that around if you'd like. You could also select the degree that it's at now. That's a new feature with 1.3. With our text, we can convert it to a path. We can weld text.
Clicking this button welds any overlapping outlines on your text. Additionally, it changes your text to a path, which allows you to move individual nodes of your letters. Another thing you can do to text in Monport Design Hub is put it on a path. Doing this will move your text around a curved line or shape.
Draw a circle and kind of curve that by selecting both, and then create text on path, and then we can align that. So there's that ability now that you can do, which is pretty cool. Obviously you can choose a style of text, and that should pull from your text library. So you can add text from the internet and it will work here, which is pretty neat. And then you can array it, so make multiple copies of it pretty easily. So that's text. This feature here is elements, and a shortcut for that, I actually just type E and it will pull it up. And you can see you can pull in some nice design features like borders here, animals, holiday, which will be kind of helpful. So all of that, clip art type stuff you can bring in, and you can see it just kind of sets it there, and then you can do whatever you want with that. Obviously a rectangle tool, pretty easy to use there. You can do radius. Again, sometimes you may not see that selected. You have to select on the shape, and then you can add radius here pretty easily. You can decide to fill it like that. So this software seems very visual in that right now this would be like a cut path because there's no fill. This fill button, now it would be an engraving path, so it would fill all of that in. So pretty visual to kind of confirm what you are going to be seeing when you do stuff. So selecting multiple shapes here, like if we wanted this cut out, is actually pretty easy. Just like in Lightburn, you can select both shapes and then you can see this changes to multiple objects, and then you can kind of cut it out using these tools, Boolean tools up here, just like in Lightburn. So that's pretty neat as well. Let's see, circle tool, easy to use there. A polygon tool, again, updating how many sides is pretty easy, and you can rotate that around as you need. Line tool. This looks like a curvy line tool. And then pretty interesting and unique to this software is this AI image tool. So you can basically do text to image, type in a prompt that you want to see. So if we wanted to see bald eagle with American flag, you can type that in and then generate it. And you can see it gives you some options there that you can pull directly into your design here to engrave out. So you can see now we have this. Go ahead and move this over, and then with this image model tool, now we can kind of convert this to like how we want to see it engraved out. So that is pretty awesome. Well integrated into the software, this AI feature. Along with that AI feature, you can put in your own images via the image to image. So you can upload your own images, prompt what you want to change or do with it, and then you can generate a different image out of that. So again, pretty unique an ability with this AI integration into this software. And then this batch tool here, we haven't been able to get this to work just yet. It's pretty spotty, but basically you would select an image that you want, and then the camera system with the software when you're connected, we're not connected right now, but when you're connected, this background obviously has your materials in there. And by hitting the fill button, it's supposed to pull your object that you have highlighted and then automatically insert it into the other objects on your work surface. But we haven't been able to get that to work properly. It does make copies, but it doesn't always make the correct number of copies, and it certainly never places it appropriately like this shows here. So I think that will come with a future software update, but right now we've found it as non-functional. And then there's this more or App Center here. When you're connected to the machine, you could go direct to your debugging tools, which you can manually fire your laser, and then you can select the illumination level of the internal LED lights. So if your background is just too bright, like you can turn the LEDs down through this setting here, which you could also do in the settings of the machine when it's turned on. Over to the layers tool here, you can update number of layers, and then you can select an image and then move it to whatever layer you want. It's really important that you separate out your fill from your cut. So these are all going to be cuts, right? They're just lines, they're not filled in. if I put this on the same layer as, say, this image, it would give me an error because it's expecting to do a fill with the settings of this particular layer. So your cut needs to be on a separate layer than your fill, which honestly is good practice anyway, so that you can separate those functions out. Additionally, what they've done is made it so that in order for you to say, we have all this mess on our workspace here, but I say I only want to engrave this, well, how do I tell it I just want to engrave this? There's unfortunately no setting right now where you can just engrave selected images, but what you can do is create a toolpath layer, basically, that you can set everything else on. So I can select all of this, and then I can put this onto layer 3. So now I can turn layer 3 off, and now I will only engrave this particular layer. Though we have found if you have fill and cut layers on the same layer, such as this, it will pop up an error. So probably best to have 4 layers, and this would be like a cut toolpath layer that you can put these objects on. So let me just go ahead and move that to layer 4. And then once you hide it, again, it should only engrave this out. So you can see how massive this workspace is. This is a 1 foot by 1 foot piece of 3mm linden plywood, and we have so much space in here. It's crazy that we could fit multiple pieces of this in here, which is really nice. Okay, so we've got the machine turned on now. Let's go ahead and connect. All right, there it is. I'm going to select that, and we're connected just like that. Let's refresh the background automatically. We do need to unlock the machine by pressing it. There we go. I'm obviously not going to use this. I'm just going to move this. I think what we want to do is, let's just quickly do like a Monport logo on this and kind of show you some of the features here when it comes to parameter settings, because this is where I think this Monport Design Hub software truly shines for a new laser user. This is so easy to set up. I mean, there's even pictures to show you what your results would look like. Let's just go ahead and import this in. I think it put it on a hidden layer. Yep. So we're going to put this on layer 1, and then we can hide these. Okay. So we have several options here. We can actually engrave this as is, as an image. So you can see it is an image, and we could go to the image model and choose the type of dithering effect it has. But because this is such a black and white thing, there's actually a better way to do this. It involves basically tracing out the black from the white, and you can do this with images that are truly like just two-tone black and white relatively easily. Because right now this tracing function, I'm not sure what it's for, but it's grayed out. We've never seen it usable or selectable. So there's a way to do it with this outline tool. So all I need to do is make sure my image here is selected and click on outline. And you can see it basically made a perfect SVG version of the image, but obviously some circles are filled in where they shouldn't be. But this is really easy to fix. We just now click decompose, and it kind of separates all of the paths out, and then all we have to do now is click on this disjunction, and it combines everything like that, and then fill it, just like that. A few clicks of a button. Let's go ahead and get the settings in. We can delete this now, we're not going to use that. But for this, we can basically use the presets here, and it's actually very accurate. So we can select our material, and this is a fill because it's an engraving, and we're using 3mm linden board. And you can see it automatically sets our power and speed and passes, and obviously updates our material thickness, which will actually focus our machine for us. So let's now draw a little rectangle to cut out. So let me go to this rectangle, and I can put in some values here. And then I can select both of these, and you can see up here this changes to the multiple object selector, and this is where we can actually align everything towards the middle. Okay, so now let's put this on a cut layer. Let's move this to layer 2, And layer 2 is going to be the same 3mm linen board, but a line. And you can see it auto changes our settings here for this particular material. Another way to set your engraving, I'm back on layer 1, my engraving. We can click on this parameter panel, because right now it defaults it to 45% power at 200mm per second. And I'm going to say that's probably a really dark engraving and deep engraving. And if I wanted this more, I guess, a lighter engraving, we can go to this parameter panel and check this out. You can actually see, and this is, we've found, very accurate in showing how light and dark these settings are. So we're going to go with, I guess, the lightest option here at 200mm per second. Let's see how that looks. And you can see once you select on that, it auto updates here. So now we're at 15% power. And I think that's pretty good. You know, I'm just going to delete all this stuff we don't need. Okay, then we can go to this path and it will show us, you know, how the machine is going to move through its function. So I can close that preview. And now we can go. I think we got everything set up. So we didn't quite cut through the material, so I think what we're going to do is just turn up the power a little bit, and then we should be able to cut through this pretty easily. This was at 35% power, which is not a whole lot, so we'll just kick up the power a bit and see if we can cut this out next time. Also, I think we can go a bit faster on this Monport design. It's still really deep engraving, but pretty good results, decent results.
In this video, we just engraved wood, but stay tuned for future videos where we try engraving and cutting more materials with this machine. Once again, a huge thanks to Monport for sending us this 70-watt CO2 laser engraver. We'll have the link to it in the description. If you're interested in this laser or any Monport machine, you can use our discount code Anonymous10 for 10% off your purchase.
Alright, so we got a clean cut with no charring at all. Pretty impressed with that. We got slightly lighter engraving between the two. This is a really powerful machine. Like, even at this speed and power, we're going into the wood at least a millimeter. That's kind of impressive. I almost wish we could do lighter engraving, but that's getting pretty fast. So after using this machine for a bit, here's some of our initial thoughts. Obviously, some of the pros of this machine are its incredible workspace. This is the largest desktop CO2 laser that we have in our arsenal. Also, it's the most powerful CO2 laser that we have. At 70 watts, this is a beast when it comes to cutting. When using the MDH software, this is Wi-Fi compatible and is very nice to be able to be away from the machine and not tethered next to it with a cable. And the Wi-Fi seems very dependable. We haven't had an issue where it disconnects mid-job when connected via Wi-Fi. Additionally, the exhaust fans that come integrated into the machine on this side here make it so that there's really no need for an inline fan. We have run this machine and done cuts and engravings, and the existing exhaust fans work to push out all of the smoke, and we've kept our workspace pretty smoke-free, which is really nice. The camera system that comes on this machine is really easy to calibrate in the MDH software. certainly a lot easier than the calibration process for connecting in Lightburn. We like that this machine comes with an integrated LiDAR feature, which allows for the autofocusing in the MDH software, as well as kind of gauging what your material is to prevent you from having to get a set of calipers out and measuring your material every time. You can just use a LiDAR feature with a touch of a button, and the machine will detect it and focus your laser based off of that. Obviously, there's a bit of variability in there. We saw around 2 millimeters where it may or may not measure correctly. We like the fact that Monport is continuously improving the software for this. So we went from version 1.2 to 1.3, and 1.3 makes it so that this machine is much more capable and much more useful than version 1.2. So certainly I expect to see a lot of future updates with the MDH software that make this even more usable and more user-friendly. I love the fact that this laser tube comes with an integrated red dot so that you could easily align your laser. It makes it for really easy adjustments if it needs it. Now, our machine came perfect right out of the box, but certainly not everybody's gonna get that. Having that red dot integrated into your laser tube makes it so that you can easily center your laser to fire right in the middle of your mirrors. Also, when we eventually connect to Lightburn, it'll make it so that doing those larger projects where you need to run a large piece through and do a process of lining up material, having that integrated red dot be perfectly aligned with the actual firing CO2 laser makes it so that you're gonna have perfect alignment every time. Because this machine is so powerful, it really does excel at cutting at very low power settings as well. So you don't have to crank this thing all the way up to 70%, 60% to get good clean cuts. At 40%, you can cut through relatively thick material with just a few passes, which makes it again for very clean cutting with very little soot along the edge, certainly powerful. As this being a CO2 laser, there's a wide variety of materials that you can engrave with this machine, from wood, paper, cardboard, cardstock, acrylic, MDH, anodized aluminum, and then other certain metals with marking spray. You can do a whole host of materials with a CO2 laser. Certainly the most versatile type of laser that you can purchase. Overall, the machine is very sturdily put together. Everything is zip tied nicely, hot glued in place at connections, but it is very, very heavy, very sturdy, and we certainly do appreciate that. Now, some things to note about this particular machine that you want to go in with eyes wide open. Currently, the batch engraving function in the MDH software does not appear to be functional. At least we have found it to not be functional. I expect that the MDH software, when newer versions come out, that will much improve and we'll end up getting there. There's no issue with the hardware here at all. It's all software related issues. So I expect that with future software and firmware updates, that's going to be solved here in the near future. A con with this machine is there's no cutout at the bottom to put a rotary at the bottom for a large diameter project. However, this machine does come with the ability to do curved engraving, which means maybe you don't even need a rotary. You can just set your mug there on the bottom and then have it engraved on that curved surface. But of course, you, without a rotary, don't have the ability to go all the way around a mug if you have a design that goes all the way around. You're just gonna get that top curved surface. We're gonna test that out in the future as well, in a future video. But again, something to note going in, that there is no cutout at the bottom for a larger project underneath. Another thing to note with the software is there's no interval settings that you can set, much like you can in Lightburn. You can set how close together the rows of your engraving go. Right now it's just whatever its default is, and there's no way to change that. I'd expect that with future iterations with MDH software that it'll start opening up for users to set what those values are. But currently, you've got to go with the current engraving settings that comes with the software. Another thing to note is the instructions that came in the box with this machine were out of date. To get the up-to-date instructions, you can just go to the Monport website under the MEGA and the MDH software, and you can download the instruction manual there that is going to be completely up to date to the version of MDH that's out. I suggest you do that rather than using the out-of-date instructions. And then lastly, particular to our machine, when we received it, I was having a hard time getting the liquid coolant, the water, to cycle through the system because there was a kink in the hose. Again, this may just be our machine. I believe the hose was just a little bit too long at this corner here, which caused a kink in the line, making it so that the system wouldn't prime. The water pump wasn't powerful enough to kind of suck the liquid through to go throughout the entire system. Pretty easy fix. Unfortunate, I had already put the liquid in there, so I had to kind of clean up some spillings, but I just cut off a little bit of that tube, unkinked it, stuck it back on, and the system primed itself, and it was working perfect with no issue. So we're going to continue this series here, and we're going to test this MDH software a little bit more using curved surfaces, some different materials. We're also going to focus in on connecting this to Lightburn and running its paces through Lightburn, though we're going to have some features that we're not going to be able to use, such as the LiDAR and autofocusing. We're just unfortunately not going to be able to use those in Lightburn. Now there is a way to connect the camera in Lightburn, but it's going to be involved in kind of disconnecting a camera from the main board, which we'll get into with an updated video here soon. This machine is jam-packed with a whole lot of features that we really just scratched the surface on. There's so much more we need to get into. Stay tuned for future videos where we unpack all of those features and spend a little bit more time on those individual aspects of this machine. We think this machine has a lot of potential. Certainly the hardware is really good and the software is just continuously getting better. So we look forward to seeing future iterations of that as well and what that software can do to help your workflow.
Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I know this video was quite long and we appreciate your support of our channel. Stay crafty!